Door. Well, it's Your Money Radio. We're back again. It's Your Money Radio, where you can make more money, you can save more money, and you can have more money for all your financial goals. Correct?
Correct. Good job.
All right.
Yay.
All right. No shots on that one, guys.
I'm still not impressed with your 50% ratio.
I'm a little better than 50%. That's not one that I have written on a card. I do somewhere, but I just don't
I
have
will
it.
make one for you for next time.
Well, I'm
Yes.
But then I don't bring my glasses, so it's tough to read.
You have to write it real big.
Right, okay.
So now my wife's sitting at home, so she knows she's going to listen, so she can tell me all the things I did wrong
Great.
when we first started our company.
You can tell by the look in her eyes how many shots she's had.
Yeah, that's right.
It's been a bad day. Don't tell me that. I don't
No.
know.
We're talking about shots of ketones.
Yeah, we're talking about shots of ketones, shots of pure milk.
Pure milk.
Yes.
Shots of
Does the body good.
Does the
espresso.
body
Yes.
good?
Without further ado, we should talk about to Heather about some of these things. I read these notes, and you're talking about what are you talking about today?
Well,
Go ahead.
we're going to spend a little time talking about small business, starting your business, or if you've already started your business, what maybe you are doing right, and also what maybe you need to change that you might be doing wrong. So I wanted to kind of begin with the issue of, do I need an actual legal entity? Right?
Yes. Next.
This is a big question, and I do a lot of business consulting. I love working with startup business owners because they're excited and passionate. They have a vision, and I want to help them accomplish that in a legal way that's going to do them good well into the future. But people always come to me and say, well, I've been doing business under my name, or I filed for a DBA, a doing business as filing with the Secretary of State, and why would I need an entity? Isn't that going to mess things up and change things? And my response is that it might be initially slightly inconvenient. There's a few extra steps, right, at the very front end, but the end result is that you are protected and helped in a way that cannot happen, legally speaking, when you have just a DBA and are doing business solely under your individual name. And here's what I mean by that. The most common form of entity these days is a limited liability company. And we've heard the term LLC. There are a lot of LLCs out there, right? And there are various other types of entities, but they're pretty old school, kind of onerous as far as the requirements with the states and taxes and so forth. So most often I will recommend that a client create an LLC. Very minimal fee. You file with the Missouri Secretary of State. You fill out what are called articles of organization, which gives some information about your business. Registered agent, which I sort of jokingly say is the person you're designating to be served if you were ever to be sued. You put all that information down and you pay a fee, and your business is technically formed, right?
Right.
And a lot of clients come to me after they have already done that on their own, which you can do. It is not considered practicing law to fill out that form. But I would suggest to you that working with an attorney on the front end before you fill out that form is really important, because we want all of your entity documentation to be consistent. And here's why. The beauty of an LLC is, in fact, that it, as its name would suggest, limits liability. And here's what that means. If someone gets really, really mad at me in my practice, which thankfully has not occurred yet, but let's just assume for the hypothetical that has happened, and they sue my law firm, my LLC law firm, if they were to obtain a judgment against me, so they're really mad, they think I did a bad job, and they want $10,000, that money, because I only have an LLC, because I have an LLC and not just a DBA, that $10,000 could only ever be collected from my business. It can never come out of my personal assets, okay? When you have a DBA, it is all of your personal assets. Anything that you own in your individual name is up for grabs for a creditor. So if you default on a business loan and you only have a DBA, That is your personal bank accounts, your personal vehicles, your personal residence. Whereas if you have an LLC, assuming you didn't sign a personal guarantee on the business loan, but if you have an LLC and you've signed as an owner, we call them members, if you've signed as a member of the LLC, it's only the assets of your business that would be potentially up for grabs if you got in a tight space with a collector, a creditor, somebody that sued you. So it is an extremely minimal cost on the front end. So to give you an idea, our firm charges a flat fee of $350 plus the filing fees with the Secretary of State. So if you plan for a little under $500 total, all in, you're gonna get an entity that's created with the state. We will obtain your federal tax ID number for you, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. And we will also create for you what's called an operating agreement, which we're gonna talk about the importance of that as well. And that is something that you can itemize as a business expense. Legal fees to start up your business are business expenses, and it is a very minimal fee for this huge amount of liability protection.
And I will say, we did the LLC route.
Good job.
Yeah, we're
Gold star.
We did a lot of things that maybe weren't the brightest. Now, we were LLC partnership, which I know that's different because now we're thinking S Corp, because I like to pay myself rather than, wait till the end of the year and.
That's an amazing segue. Do we have more time to go into some tax stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, good job. We're on the same wavelength
There we
today.
go.
Okay, so tax implications. People get real freaked out about taxes. Well, if I create an entity, I'm going to have another tax return to file, and I'm going to be taxed more, and it's going to be really complicated. Most startup businesses want to be taxed. If you are a sole owner or the sole member of that LLC, they should be taxed as what's called with IRS a sole proprietorship or a pass-through entity. And John can jump in here and help me with this discussion, but generally what that means is that if I'm the sole member of my LLC and I elect to be taxed as a sole proprietor, the income of my business is considered my personal income, right? If, in your scenario, you elect instead to be taxed as a corporation, you're probably doing that because you don't want to be self-employed anymore, and you're going to make yourself a W-2 employee,
Exactly, it's a
right?
W-2 employee.
And businesses that are more established, that have a higher net income number, I usually recommend move into that status later. But on the front end, to minimize both tax returns that you would have to file and tax implications for the business, I almost always recommend that you elect to be taxed as a pass-through entity, a disregarded entity with the IRS, which means it's the same thing as what you've been doing as a DBA. To create an LLC and elect to be taxed as a disregarded entity, the tax situation is exactly the same as you have been doing it. Granted, I'm not a CPA, so I always say, go talk to John, go retain someone who is a certified public accountant and make sure that this plan fits for your overall business plan and your personal finances. But generally, the tax situation is exactly as you have been doing when you create an LLC. Our firm will obtain for you your EIN, your federal tax identification number, and that is what a bank is going to want to have. They are going to want to have the articles of organization that got filed with the Secretary of State, and they're going to want your business tax identification number to be able to open a business bank account. Depending on what your business is doing, it is much more likely than not that you are also going to need a state tax identification number, and that's what we use if you have employees to pay your payroll taxes, right? But this is really, it's a few online forms, and if you hire me to do it, it's under $500 to put this all together to make sure that your personal assets are protected and are out of the way of even being a possibility in the event you got in a problem and someone was owed money by your business. let's talk about an operating agreement and what that is. So an operating agreement is like bylaws for an LLC. It's essentially the same thing. Most people are familiar with the term bylaws. Less people are familiar with the term operating agreement. But what an operating agreement does is it sets out sort of the rules of the game of how you're going to run your business. This is important even if you're the sole owner, but it's extremely important to have it if you have a partner or more than one partner, because what it's going to provide is, how do we vote? Do we vote based on ownership percentage, or is it one vote per person that's involved? How would we sell our portion of the business? Most small businesses don't want the partners to be able to sell their interest to some third party that the other partners don't know, right? We went into business together for a reason. We're friends, we're colleagues, whatever the case may be. I don't want to do business with Joe Schmo. So the operating agreement will set out what we call a right of first refusal, the ability of the other partners, if one of them wants to sell, to say, hey, you can't sell to third party yet, we want to buy you out instead. That rule, that ability to do that is only created if it's set out in an operating agreement.
Yeah.
So the operating agreement is sort of the rules, and my partner and I, we have an LLC, so we are co-members, is the technical term, of our law firm. I don't pull it out and look at it that often, right? But every now and again, if there's a situation that we need to remember, how do we decide we were going to approach this? That document becomes very important. And I always believe and counsel my startup businesses that you got to plan for being in business, and you have to plan for the possibility that you may be out of business, right? You got to plan for good and bad endings, right? And if it's a bad ending, and God forbid you end up in court about the bad ending, that operating agreement is going to control the rules of what happens, and it is extremely important so that you're not getting into he said, she said, an allegation of a verbal agreement.
I think that's where most businesses mess up.
Yes.
I mean, I think filing with, to start the business, because if you just don't know anything and you go to the bank and say, I want to start my own business, they'll tell you
They
need
will.
X, Y, Z.
That's right.
And they'll help you do it. Maybe,
Yes.
Some bankers, personal
will.
bankers, they'll help you do
They
it.
will.
But then they don't tell you about anything you need to do after you got your bank account set up, and
That's
most
right.
people don't have a clue.
Most people don't have a clue. So I have a lot of clients that have set up their business. So they have an LLC that's registered with the Secretary of State. They have a tax ID number because they needed that to get their bank account. But they don't have an operating agreement. So here's the other reason that an operating agreement is really important. The reason that all states in this union allow limited liability companies is in part because we have a albeit minimal, but we have a minimal expectation that you maintain some what we call corporate formalities. So if someone were to sue your LLC and you do not have an operating agreement, there is a possible argument that because you have failed to maintain business formalities, because you failed to put together an operating agreement that sets up the rules of the game, so to speak, for your business, you should not be given the benefit of limited liability. And therefore, because you don't have an operating agreement, me plaintiff that wants money from this business will try to what we call pierce the corporate veil, right? Pierce the business, pierce the limited liability protection to get at the assets of the individual owners.
You can't just say you're an LLC. You
That's
have
right.
to act like
You
an
do.
LLC.
And this operating agreement is, by default, probably the single, maybe one of two most important factors that a court would consider when determining whether piercing the corporate veil should be permitted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's it right there. Why form an LLC if you're not going to take the next step, do an operating agreement? Because
It's not a given.
that's right. If you ever get in a situation that you're trying to avoid in the first place, you could end up back where you started
That's
as
right.
a sole proprietor.
That's
Now,
right.
when you're doing we talked about the 500. Does that include helping them set up the operating
It does.
agreement?
So
Okay.
we prepare that for you. So, and the 500 is with that filing fee. Secretary of State changes that from time to time. I think it's around 110 bucks is the filing fee to create the LLC. But yeah, if you plan on $500 and come visit with me about creating your business or helping you get a business put together, we will prepare those articles and file them in a way that I feel comfortable with it being, meaning sometimes people put stuff in their articles that they file with the Secretary of State that is wild or too narrow, and I want to sort of make sure it's a little more generic so that if their business plan changes and they were in construction but they want to go into more materials, it allows for that change, right? You have to designate what the purpose of the business is for the Secretary of State. So I will put that together. We will obtain the federal tax ID number, and I will also draft your operating agreement and provide notary services for that to be signed,
So is
all as part of that fee.
So the operating agreement is actually a notarized that you keep, not actually filed with the state?
It's not filed with the state, and that's important. Unlike a corporation, where if you amended frequently, you would likely have to file notice with the Secretary of State. With an LLC, you can amend it and you just maintain it with your own corporate records. And the only time you have to pull it out is if a co-member wants to look at it, right? If you're the keeper of the document and your partner says, let's look at that, right? You have to get it out and let them look at it. If you get audited, they will likely want to see that. And if you're subpoenaed to produce that type of record. But those are the only times that you would have to
So it
produce
literally could be amended, adopted,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
notarized to
Yeah.
the new events. So
Exactly. Ours, for example, for our firm, I think we've had maybe 2 amendments since we started our firm 6 years ago. Not major, but as long as you keep those with your corporate records, you're doing your good business job to keep your limited liability.
So you said some people have started a company without those things. Can they come see you about starting an
Absolutely.
operating agreement after their creation
Yes,
date?
sir, and we often do that because a lot of people, as John said, a lot of people do that and can sort of self-help on the front end for those first couple of steps. But the operating agreement, and let me get on a soapbox just for a second, you can download these from online. The problem with that is there are very specific rules that are unique to each separate state for the contents of an operating agreement. So if you download it from online, it may or may not be enforceable depending on what it provides.
For the state you're in.
That's right. You really need to consult with an attorney who handles business matters to put that together for you, and we can absolutely do that. So once you have all of those things, and some banks require all 3 of these things these days in order to set up the bank account. The other thing we wanted to spend a minute on was the issue of bank accounts and commingling of funds, right? Mm-hmm. This is the other, I mentioned there were one of 2 issues that can get you into trouble on the liability protection. And the one is not having an operating agreement. The other is commingling personal money with business money. And how to keep those separate is sometimes a weird sort of process. But we'll spend a minute to talk about it. You absolutely need to have a business bank account that is titled, and I mean owned, only by the LLC. Okay? So people come to me and say, well, I opened my business account and it has their LLC and them individually as co-title owners. That's a no-no, right? Your individual name needs to be nowhere on the ownership of that account. Your individual name needs to be associated as a user of your own account, right?
Yeah.
You gotta be able to deposit and pull money out. But you need to not be in your individual capacity an owner of that business account. Because if you were a co-owner with your business, you're already commingling. It looks like a personal stuff with business stuff, right? On the sort of broader, more day-to-day level, people ask me, well, how do I pay myself? Like, how's this supposed to work? I'm not a W-2 employee, right? I pay myself when I can, but it may not be super regular. Like, what's appropriate? And my answer is this. When you get paid by a client or a customer, you always run that through your business account. Absolutely, 100% of the time.
Even if it's cash?
Business account. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Come on, John.
I want you to run it through your business account. And
I asked
then-
that for the benefit of a lot of small businesses.
I understand why you say that.
That's a very common question.
It is.
Yes.
Let someone put $3,000 of cash in
Cash,
your hand,
check,
and
money
you're
order.
kind of like, you put it in there.
Yeah.
You know, I run it through.
I'm glad. I'm so
No,
glad.
you know, guys, I do. Money goes in.
Absolutely. So that's the first order of business. And the way then that you pay yourself is out of that business account. And my recommendation is that the timing of the payment be routine. So if you want to run, we call them draws, right? When you're not a W-2 employee. When you want to run a draw, think about, do you want to do that monthly? Do you want to do it bi-monthly? Try to make it routine. And the amount may not be routine. But if you were ever audited or sued, your process is very uniform then, if you're taking it out on the first of the month every month.
So let's get to, I got my small business. I got to go to my pocket. I got to grab $1,000 and put it in. That's member
Yes.
equity, correct?
Yeah, it is. We're a loan. You can structure it both
Oh,
ways.
you can structure it as a loan
Yeah,
to your
but
okay.
people get scared about that too. Well, commingling, does that mean I can't put money into my business? And the answer is no. So money going in from your personal bank account is definitely okay and actually good because it shows that you've capitalized this business, that it's a real thing, that it's not a fake entity. But the going the other way, you need to try to withdraw money or make your draws in a routine fashion.
Okay.
Just real quick, credit cards. You should have a credit card for the business, not personal.
Yeah, same situation. I've had a couple of businesses in kind of bad places on that issue. If you need a credit card for your business, and these days most do, you need to make sure that even if your name is on the card as a user, that the actual account for that credit card is with the LLC.
Anything to just summarize it real quick?
Yeah, I would say that impression is sometimes everything in business world, right? How you market yourself. And part of how you market yourself is to show people that you kind of have your ducks in a row, business-wise. And having an LLC versus just doing business under your name already on the front end sparks okay, this person has some level of sophistication and knows what they're doing. So please call us. 417-708-9681 is our office phone number. Ask to speak with me. My name is Heather Rooney McBride. You can also visit our website and tool around on what we do and who we have. We have several attorneys in our office at rmsattorneys.com.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Heather. We're sponsored by Marilee Doherty at Clarity Insurance and Financial Services. Their phone number is 887-6261. By Dr. Michael Miller at Family Back and Neck Care, 889-2225. If you give them a call, ask for Dr. Miller. We're also sponsored by Scribner Solutions with Gayla Scribner. Her phone number is 276-6009. And of course, we've got John Dittrich. He's with DB Advisors. His phone number is 763-3345. I'm Gary Bingaman, A&D Mechanical Services, 417-866-8257. I did remember my number. And boy, we wrapped that up a lot quicker than I thought we would. Yeah, listen next week. We're going to have Dr. Miller back with us to do that. It's been great, Heather, to have you for 2 weeks in a row. I got to talk to you when we're done.
That's what I was saying.
That's what you were saying? I know. This show teaches me so much more than you guys would like. Guys, have an absolutely wonderful week. We'll look forward to listening to you. Listen to us next week, 3 o'clock, here at It's Your Money Radio.